Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? I can roll up in the front. Let's talk. The only time it's the only crowd that ever really get and say, you know, yes, let's talk literature. Hi, guys. First off, again, for those of you that weren't out for my introduction at the very beginning of the event, my name is J.R.R. I am the Performing Arts and Event Sales Manager here at the National Steinbeck Center, and I am the reason for all of this chaos here tonight. So. One of the first things I do have to say for those of you that are in here, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for bringing your friends. Thank you for telling your family and nerding out with us. So that's exactly what we want to do here. So right now this panel is From the Grapes of Wrath to the Wrath of Khan, How Literature Has Influenced Pop Culture. So what I want to do now is introduce you to our panelists. So first up, we're going to have Mr. Davidson L. Howard. Come on up. He is the author. He's the author of the Crawley trilogy. Did I pronounce that right? Crawley? Crawley. It's a trilogy. And then also joining us on the panel as well, we needed somebody that also just loves books of all types, whether they're drawn or just only have words. So I want to introduce you to Nick Blackie, who's the manager of Current Comics. Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going? Hey.
Good. Nick, you look uncomfortable.
I wasn't supposed to be here today.
Seats are comfortable.
They are.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But Nick does get points for a Clerks reference right off the bat. Very good.
It's close to the heart.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we want to do is first let's touch base a little bit to kind of familiarize those of you who don't know our panelists with your backgrounds a little bit. So, first, let's start off with Davidson. So, tell us a little bit about your Crawley trilogy.
Well, the Crowley trilogy takes place in the Middle Ages during the Crusades in Italy. And Crowley is an actual city. People always ask me, what's Crowley? What's it mean? What is it? And I tell them it's a place in Italy. And that's where it all takes place. It's adjacent to the border of France. And I don't want to give all the details because I want you to go out there and read the book, but it's very much like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Those are my biggest influences growing up. And just a short bio. I've been writing since I was 6. I've done various things from movie scripts to television commercials and just pretty much writing with the end. So I've done book tours from Los Angeles to Moscow. And what I love most is attending conventions and meeting people. Because at the end of the day, from LA to Moscow, everyone's the same. We all love the genres of sci-fi, fantasy, anime, comic books, you name it. And it's a hot topic right now, especially with the movies coming out. One of my favorite superhero, Captain America, has a movie coming out in just a couple of months.
So for those of you who are not familiar with his work yet or haven't had a chance, did anybody have a chance to actually buy his book when you got here? Because if you didn't, a lot of people did because he's actually sold out. But if they want to pick up a book, where can they get them through your site?
Yeah, you get it through my site. I mean, I have one copy left, and that's it. And then after that, you can go to my website, you can go to any bookstore. But unfortunately, someone told me today that Salinas in Monterey doesn't have a bookstore. And it depressed me because Borders is gone, and Barnes & Noble closed down 200 stores, and they're closing out more, and within 10 years they will no longer exist because books are going in the way of music. It's all, oh, well, just press the button and download it, which is unfortunate for traditional books, but all my books are downloadable. I mean, you can go online and get my book for $12.95, or you can download it for $2.99. So, a lot of people rather do download, right? And but yeah, so my books are available everywhere and anywhere, and everywhere online.
It'd be really great if there was somebody up here who managed a store that had books in it that might be able to carry. Hey, Nick.
Actually, we have tried in the past to carry prose. It didn't work out too well. And it is a shame because we used to have several bookstores at Salinas. I mean, we had 2 in the mall at one point for a long time. I don't really know what happened. I can't read. I have a hard time reading books like textbooks or prose, digital format. Like I really like. That's not because I run a comic book store. It really is because it just bothers me if I can't hold something in my hand. So I think it's a damn shame that we don't have a bookstore. You can just go and just buy just like novels. Especially because I like to read a lot of Shakespeare. And I mean, I don't have a place anywhere near me. Like Barnes and the closest bookstore is Barnes and Noble in Gilroy. That's like 30 minutes away.
Well, and I know what you're saying too, when you're talking about the texture of holding a book and the smell. First off, does anybody just appreciate that at all? The smell of an actual book. There was actually, over the holidays, applause for Dead Trees. Yes. But it's true, because over the holidays, my wife and I were shopping, and because that's what you do, you go shopping with your wife during the holidays. And we went into a bookstore, and the moment we walked in, it really was. We had not been in one for such a long time that the smell of just paper is like, oh, that's good. That is really good. You know, but I think that that's one of the things too for us to talk about, to really get into this discussion about literature to pop culture, is that, Nick, I think this is a great question for you. Have you seen anybody that, in coming in to purchase whatever is their favorite comic book, whatever's on their pull list, you know, for the week, that are the same way that they just have trouble with the traditional format, or sometimes just don't even kind of realize that it's more than just the pictures they're looking at, but it's also about the story?
Well, I've been there for about 8 years now. When I first started, the clientele was very more collector oriented. It's not really so focused on reading, but shortly after, that switched really, like people that come to my store predominantly for like their readers. We have a selection of, very large selection of damaged books that were selling for 75% off. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to move, and it turned out to be very, people just, you know, they want to hold it in hand. I mean, they don't care what the condition is. I go as far as say that the majority of my clientele is just more focused on reading, and they're not really only interested in comic books. We're talking about just readers in general. Kind of how when you introduced me, you said I like to read stuff. It just doesn't matter what the format is. If it's, you know, if it's just all words or if it's pictures. I find a lot of my customers are the same exact way.
Now, David, so what was it like for you when you realized this is what I want to do? Was there one catalyst that just was the moment where you said, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to write books, and I'm going to write about vampires that don't sparkle in the sun.
Yeah, if you hate Twilight, I love my book, right? But for me, what really was the catalyst was I'm a second generation American. My family was originally from England, northern England. So I have a lot of family there. So I would spend my summers in England going to the sweet shop, eating chocolates and reading Captain Britain comic books in the late 70s. I was like, Captain Britain was one of my favorite superheroes, even though most people have no idea who he is because he's a third-tier Marvel superhero. But in the 70s, he was really hot in Britain. But, you know, in the 70s, if you remember the Rankin Bass Lord of the Rings animated movie that was out, and you know, fantasy at that time was really hot in the public eye. That, with a mixture of going to England quite often and spending my time at castles and going to the wax museum, and seeing these wax figures of crusaders and knights, and it lured me in to write about, you know, that genre of dragons and knights, and I've been writing it ever since.
Now, do you see, I listen to either of you, do you see any type of a change in your audience with so many comic books, graphic novels that are now becoming movies, television shows? Have you seen a spike in readership, either for your books or for your customers to come into the store?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially after the Avengers. Avengers was, it brought so many people in. I mean, it turned so many people on to characters that maybe they hadn't heard of before or weren't really interested in before. And then now, remember someone the other day tried telling me that before the movies, Iron Man was kind of like a B-list or C-list character, and I told him, well, not if you were a comic book reader, but if you didn't really know, if you were just casual, yeah, when that first Iron Man movie came out, it just, no one knew who Iron Man was before, unless you were in comic books. Those movies came out, everyone knows who Iron Man is, everyone loves Iron Man, and then Avengers just increased that tenfold, and but yeah, it definitely, especially with a lot of children, because what we've had a problem with over the years is the future of the hobby. Not like a lot of kids aren't really into comic books anymore. They're more into video games and card games like Pokemon. And Avengers made a big effort at changing that. Got a lot of kids interested in comic books. And now all of a sudden, the future of this hobby isn't quite so much in jeopardy anymore. 20, 50 years down the line, there's probably still going to be people buying comic books.
Yeah, for me, a little bit different than comic books, even though, to tell you the truth, I'm a major comic book reader. I spend about average $50 a week on comic books, so I am a diehard reader. I'm mostly not a fanboy, to tell you the truth, but, I enjoy independent comic books. There's a couple of comic books I found out in the hall out here that some independent comic books I'm going to be picking up before I leave. But for me, an example, when I go to Eastern Europe, there are lots of people, wanting to read my book from Western writers. The average Eastern European reads about, on average, 20 books a year. The average American, 1 to 2, right? So it's a literary society where the Western world is more of a movie, television society, So thanks to Tolkien, or should I say thanks to Peter Jackson, and thanks to J.K. Rowling and those movies, it has sure come to sales of fantasy novels. But once those movies dissipate, then it goes back down again. People, once they see The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, they get this hunger, and then they want to read anything fantasy. So to sustain the genre of fantasy, you constantly have to have a fantasy movie coming out, like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, what have you, Harry Potter. Good thing for the comic book side of it is you're going to have superhero movies for a long time. My prediction is that superhero movies are going to become like the cowboy movies, from the 40s, the 50s, and the 30s, where you're going to have superhero TV shows and superhero movies constantly, like back in the day with the cowboy movies. So the comic book genre is really going to sustain itself. Will fantasy be able to do that as well? The future is hard to say. It's hard to tell. But so far, The Hobbit itself is keeping it up there.
And that's a good example of bringing up The Hobbit. When you look at big movie trilogies, a big series of movies, of course, everybody gravitate to books. Oh, well, this sold 1,000 copies. Let's make a movie out of it. I'm sure there's an audience for it because it's just like the other one we made. But do you see that as a hindrance or a help for the book industry? That maybe somebody's out there just trying to create a story really quickly, that is trying to resemble something that's already out there just to make a quick buck and get the movies.
Actually, I can give you an example. Cowboys and the Indians. Actually, a comic book when they published the comic book just in time so they could say that the movie was based on a comic book. But when they were writing that movie, when they were filming it, that comic book did not exist.
Now, just thinking of that, have you ever experienced anybody walk into your shop and not realize that something that they've watched is based off of a comic?
Actually, yes. Walking Dead, for example. A lot of people who walk in my shop and there's a Walking Dead comic book now?
First off, any Walking Dead fans? It's okay to make noise, guys. It's all right. There you go.
I saw the same thing when Kick-Ass came out.
Right.
Same exact thing. People were amazed. Oh yeah, I like the movie a lot. Then I turned into a comic book. And, I'm sure there's other examples. Those are the only ones I can think of at the moment. But yeah, that happens.
You mentioned Kick-Ass. I like the two movies, but really, I think majority of people go see that movie for Hit Girl.
Oh yeah.
And she's just awesome. when I first saw Hit Girl, I never read the comics, but when I first saw the movie, I went, this was badass. You know?
There was a Hit Girl wandering around today. Did anyone see her? Yeah. That was pretty awesome. My wife got excited. Did you see that? From that movie. So we've talked about that. Now, do you think that with these new audiences that are coming out for new comic books, like you said, the Avengers comes out, all of a sudden, people are coming in and I want to read about them, what's a good book, what's a good comic to read, and then you brought up The Hobbit. Do you think that it can help the industry at all, and as far as going towards books to create movies or television shows? Do you think that helps at all? Do you think that there's hope for movies and television? Or is there enough good stuff out there?
I know for a fact it definitely helped us out of the line. A couple years ago, the industry wasn't really going too well. DC did that reboot that helped with the Avengers movie, also brought a whole bunch of new people in. I think it's beneficial both ways because you get now these people are interested in these characters and they want more than just one medium for them. It's maybe we're spoiled in that way, but I'm guilty of that too. It's like I read a comic book and I was like, I want to see this, in live action. I want to see this, either television form or on the big screen. And if I can't, that kind of frustrates me. But then I also, whenever I'm reading anything, I don't like imagining it in my head and not being able to see it with my eyes. So I think it helps. It helps both. It works both ways. Because Hollywood is always running out of ideas.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good example to bring up that they don't have, especially when there's books out there. But I think that maybe there's a lot of examples also in movies where they even reference other authors. I mean, not just because we have it here wearing a hat, but Jules Verne is constantly referenced in the Back to the Future films. It kind of shows you that the writers, that was their influence. They're trying to explain to people that maybe go check this out as well, learn more about them. Is there anybody from the past, any other works that you try to reference, specifically to you, Davidson, or maybe not reference, but you might tell people that, well, this is actually based on, or if you like this, you should really go back and check this out.
Yeah, well, for fantasy novels in general, writers, Tolkien is basically the godfather of fantasy. I mean, everything you see, even in the Harry Potter movies, those aren't all original creations of J.K. Rowling, goblins, orcs, and the hobbits, and these are all Tolkien created, creatures, and we all use them. Now they're just public domain, but Tolkien was basically gave birth to that. So I don't want to say everything that I write is based off Tolkien, but he's a big influence on me, and every fantasy writer is influenced by Tolkien. I mean, everyone uses his characters. Everyone looks towards his vision to get ideas, in regards to what they're writing. A lot of fantasy writers, they build their own fantasy worlds, like Tolkien did, like C.S. Lewis with the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, I try to differentiate myself from those two writers as well. I don't create my own realms. All my stories and characters, it takes place in the real world of this planet, of this realm, just, like in the Middle Ages. I don't try to create my own realms, but there are many that do, and they base it off of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, because they were really one of the first people to really make that popular, besides, old classics like Beowulf. But it's mostly Tolkien and Lewis for most fantasy writers. And in regards to the comic books, I think what Marvel is doing, if you compare DC, compare Marvel in regards to movies, I mean, Marvel is hitting it out the park. Alex Rodriguez on steroids, it's a constant home run, and then they put in these little clips at the end of the credits that people stick around for, and just a 30-second scene, people are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, I can't wait for the next movie. And I have to be honest with same thing. The last movie when Benicio del Toro came out and he was the collector, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to be the collector. He's collecting the Infinite Gauntlet, for Thanos and all of this. I got all these things in my head, so I'm thinking, oh man, 2016, I can't wait. You know what I mean? So Marvel already has us in their grasp. They already have our money. They just haven't made movies.
I think the great thing about that is that everything you just said, everybody actually understood what you were saying. Well, most people never get.
That would not normally see a superhero movie. Like, I'm watching Thor 2. Thor's not one of my favorite superheroes, but I mean, they're good movies. And sitting in front of me are two elderly women. Now, usually you don't see that, but they are seeing something in these Thor movies that maybe not all of us are seeing. Maybe it's, it reminds me of Excalibur or who knows. But there's something that these elderly women you're seeing, and it's bringing them in. So, Thor, the movies, for example, the way they make them today, it's not only for the comic book fan, but it's for every person. Everyone sees the looks.
Now, is there any?
I know many people may disagree with me in this statement, but I enjoy the Chronicles of Narnia movies. I really enjoy them, and I know there are some fans out there that they're casting. But I would like to see more. I would like to see all 7 books made. I don't know why they're not going forward with that, but I would like to see more of that series turned into a film.
Do you think, actually, a great example of using those movies, do you think it's because the studios were looking to very quickly make it a new Harry Potter franchise, and it just didn't happen from, as far as the numbers game that they were looking at, and then they said, well, okay, it's not going to work.
True, yeah, no, you're right about that. But also, C.S. Lewis, he kind of has a stigma about him, great writer. But, most of his readers tend to be, church-going people, and they talk about, Aslan is representative of this, and this, and this, and this. And, just the basic, it's like, okay, well, I just want to enjoy the story and a good movie, so don't try to,
Don't preach to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's here.
It's not like there's a reason I don't answer my door. At home. And I think that was, many people looked at that when they saw the 2 movies, and I think maybe they thought if they could make it more secular, maybe it gained more ground. But I think the people who were doing the movie, Walden Entertainment at the time, they didn't want to steer from that. They wanted to keep it the way C.S. Lewis envisioned it, and that's why they're not making any more movies. But like Tolkien, Jackson, believe it or not, if you read The Lord of the Rings, it's very much like C.S. Lewis if you understand Tolkien and his religious backstory. I don't like too much into his religion, but all the dates and everything are all religious references in his life. And Peter Jackson, he's kind of gotten away from that, and basically he's added a lot of stuff to attract people to the movie. For me, watching The Hobbit, last December I was watching The Hobbit, and I have to remove myself from the book, because if I keep thinking about the book as I'm watching the movie, I just end up being disappointed in the movie. Because I'm like, that character's not in it, that's how can that character be in it? That character didn't exist, Tolkien never created that character. And I'm running through my head the whole time I'm watching the movie, and I'm driving myself crazy. So I learned to separate myself. This is not a Tolkien movie, this is a Jackson movie, so that's a little difference.
And as an author, do you find that harder and harder to do, to separate yourself from the book when it's been turned into something?
I do, even on the littlest things, and you might think I'm a little crazy, but...
You're talking to the right guy.
But back in the 80s, the Batman with Michael Keaton, and Jack Nicholson played the Joker, and in my opinion, still the best Joker. That's just my opinion. But I read the book before the movie, and, when Jack Nicholson's throwing up the money, at the end scene, everyone's grabbing the money and all this, but you didn't get to see the money in the movie. But if you read the book, the money actually had Joker faces on it. He was just fooling the people. And I was watching the movie, I'm like, wait a minute, they kind of explain the money part. That's kind of a big deal in the book. So even something as small as that kind of irritates me. So if I know something is going to be a movie, you know, I try not to read the book. I don't want to read a movie.
Now, do you think there's something to be said about movies that are maybe so faithful of an adaptation that it just doesn't work?